You deserve my praise. Thank you, Jesus. Adoration and glory, it belongs to you.
In the scriptures we read this morning, we were taken into the innermost intimacy between Jesus, his followers, and God. We noticed in John 13:1, it said, having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. He loved them no matter if they were failed, and he loved them in his sufferings. Then he gave them the love commandment in verse 34 when he told them that they must love one another just as he had loved them. But what is this love that's referred to in these scriptures? In the Greek language, there are several words used to describe the word love. And the one used by John and Jesus in Scripture here was not the one commonly used by the Greeks. Normally, when the Greeks were talking every day about love, they used the word to refer to someone who was blessed of a god, or someone who was the parent of only one child. But in the New Testament, the word love shows the love that God has for humanity. The love that God has of lifting humanity from judgment and death and giving us forgiveness and life, loving us in our failures, no matter what comes into our lives. The poet James Rowe captured this meaning in the great hymn that we've sung from the time we were little children. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very sadly stained within, sinking to rise no more. When the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, from the waters lifted me, now safe am I. Love lifted me. Love lifted me when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. The New Testament usage of the word also meant love of humans for each other. Jesus said in verse 34, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. It meant to esteem one another, to lift each other up, to prefer one another, to give each other preference in things. This kind of love was possibly pictured the best I've ever read in an incident that occurred at the Special Olympics. I have a little great niece who is was born with CP and participates in the Special Olympics. So the story always meant so much to me that at the 100-meter dash one day at the Special Olympics, the gun sounded and all the kids took off, but one little boy tripped and fell at the starting gate. And as the other little kids looked around and they saw him laying on the ground, they went back, every one of them, picked him up, helped him get back in the race with them, so that they could all finish together. Now that's love. That's love. When most of us would be so selfish, we want to be sure we got there first and got that gold. But no, that was love. It's the determination and the desire to lift one another up and to help each other and care about the welfare of one another. We love when we lift each other up. Now that's the definition of love. But how do we demonstrate it? A whole different story. Jesus said, as I have loved you. Jesus was the example of how to love. And first, he demonstrated that love in service. We read how that evening as they were gathering together, Jesus got up, took off his outer cloak, wrapped a towel around his waist, got a basin of water, went and washed the feet of the disciples, And doing this, he took the role of a servant, not as a king, not as their master, but as their servant. You see, during that time, everybody walked everywhere they went. Only the wealthy had donkeys to ride. Most people walked. And they didn't have leather shoes or tennis shoes. The wealthy had open sandals, and most people went barefoot. They didn't have sidewalks, they didn't have paved streets. They had dirt roads. And animals used the same dirt roads, so there was animal excrement on the roads everywhere they went. And if it had been raining, I imagine it was pretty muddy and quite smelly. Now we hear a lot about the Roman baths, where everybody went to take their baths all the time. But you had to get somewhere after you got out of that bath. So your feet still got dirty. And if you were invited into someone's home, when you got there, one of the servants of your host would come with a basin of water and get down and wash your feet. That's what Jesus was doing. He got down on his knees like a servant, and he washed their feet. While they were sitting around bickering over who was going to be greatest in the kingdom of God and who was going to sit at his right side in his kingdom, he forgot about all of that and showed them love. He showed it to all of them. He showed it to Judas, who he knew was going to betray him. He showed it to Peter, who he told would deny him. And he showed it to Thomas, who he knew would doubt him later. Have you ever participated in what's known as a service of humility or a foot washing service in your childhood growing up in churches? Most churches have quit having that. It's called a service of humility. It's usually the first part of the communion service. Today, the two that I can think of who still have that as the first part of the communion service are the Seventh-day Adventists.
Now I realize there will be days we will feel down and blue, but that's not gonna be today. Hey, if you take the time to pray for me, I'll pray for you, and we can lift our voice and say, yeah, yeah.